The Colosseum is one of the most iconic and grand monuments of ancient Rome, famous for hosting gladiator battles and being the heart of Roman entertainment. But behind these games, there was a grueling and often overlooked task: cleaning the arena after each fight. That responsibility fell to a specific group of slaves known as the Servi Publici, who were essential to the continuation of the games even though their work was often forgotten. The Servi Publici were slaves owned by the Roman state, who worked in administrative roles and public works. While most of these slaves were involved in administrative duties, a significant number were assigned to more physical tasks, such as maintaining large public structures, including the Colosseum. These slaves weren't just in charge of cleaning the arena after gladiator games, but were also responsible for other crucial duties, such as making sure the Colosseum's facilities were in good condition for the next event. The maintenance of the Colosseum was not a simple matter. It was a massive stone structure capable of holding tens of thousands of spectators. Keeping it functional and ready for the next day's spectacle required continuous effort. The Servi Publici worked tirelessly, often through the night, ensuring that every trace of the previous day's bloodshed and chaos was erased before sunrise. Now just imagine how gruesome their job was. After each battle, the Colosseum would be covered in blood, animal remains, and the bodies of fallen gladiators. The stench of death and decay filled the air, mingling with the smell of sweat, dust, and spilled wine from the cheering crowds. Cleaning it was a brutal and complex task that required great effort to restore the arena to its spotless appearance, ready for the next show. The arena floor was covered in a thick layer of sand. Its Latin name, arena, from which the word arena comes, was used to absorb the blood spilled during combat. Each fight left the arena in terrible condition, and that sand had to be removed. To do so, the Servi Publici would collect the blood-soaked, debris-filled sand and replace it with a fresh layer, ensuring the area was ready for the next match. This was no easy task. The sand was heavy, clumped together with dried blood, fragments of broken weapons, and the remains of animals. It took many men working with shovels, buckets, and carts to transport the waste out of the arena and bring in new, clean sand. In addition to replacing the sand, they also had to remove the bodies of the dead gladiators, which were often left on the arena floor as part of the spectacle. The sight of fallen men and beasts served as a grim reminder of the brutality that entertained the Roman citizens. Once the audience had dispersed, the Servi Publici would enter the arena, dragging away the lifeless bodies, sometimes dismembered or mangled beyond recognition. Their work also included removing the carcasses of animals killed in combat: lions, tigers, bears, and other wild beasts brought in to fight gladiators or each other. This task required teams of scavengers or designated laborers who were specifically in charge of collecting the remains and hauling them away to be burned or discarded outside the city. The process was slow, dangerous, and unpleasant, as the animals' bodies were often left in the open heat for hours before removal. On top of that, the Servi Publici also had to clean up after the crowds of spectators who threw food scraps, drinks, and other trash during the games. The stands and corridors of the Colosseum were littered with the remnants of bread, fruit, wine jars, and discarded objects. All of that waste had to be swept up and removed to ensure the Colosseum was clean for the next spectacle. It was an exhausting and filthy job, but essential to keeping the Colosseum running smoothly. Another task of these slaves was to remove the weapons and armor of fallen combatants, since any defeated gladiator would be stripped of his gear right after the fight. These weapons, once collected, were returned to the gladiators' owners, especially if the fighters were slaves, or sent to the armories where they could be repaired and reused in future battles. This process was carefully supervised, as weapons and armor were expensive property and essential to the continuation of the games. As mentioned in another account, the bodies of dead gladiators were taken to the spoliarium, located in the underground levels of the Colosseum. Many of the dead gladiators were simply thrown to the wild animals kept in the Colosseum, lions, tigers, and other predators. If a gladiator died and had relatives or close companions such as his lanista, fellow fighters, or family, they could request the body from the slaves in charge of removing the dead from the arena. This gave the gladiator's family the chance to cover the cost of his funeral and memorial, ensuring he received a proper burial and was remembered with dignity rather than discarded like waste. Though the lives of the Servi Publici were marked by hardship and lack of freedom, there were some opportunities for improving their living conditions. They could earn a small amount of money for personal use and also received an annual subsidy from the imperial treasury, which gave them some means of support beyond basic food rations. For those who demonstrated reliability and skill, there existed a faint hope of advancement. The possibility of accumulating wealth, though limited, did exist, and that gave the slaves a chance to improve their social standing. Moreover, there was the possibility of manumission for Servi Publici, who stood out in their work. If a slave was particularly useful and efficient, he could be freed, which meant a significant change in his social status. As a result, some of these former slaves could go on to gain respect, especially if they were involved in administrative tasks or in building important public works for the Roman Empire. They might later serve as free citizens, working in similar roles or managing others in public service. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the Colosseum remained a powerful symbol of Rome's history. The arena that once hosted bloody battles came to be seen as a historical relic. Pope Pius IV, who lived in the 16th century, even suggested that pilgrims collect sand from the Colosseum as a relic, claiming it was soaked with the blood of martyrs. That idea that the Colosseum was a sacred place, stained with blood, highlights the site's symbolic importance over the centuries. However, few remember the slaves who quietly carried out the job of cleaning the Colosseum after each spectacle.